what we often see are good men and men intending to do good, but under pressure, they haven't become wholehearted. There is an unsettled question that they bring to their world when they're put in the context of more power, more influence, more responsibility. Things surface within their soul, rifts in their soul. So long as a man is taking the most fundamental need he has as a man and bringing it to his world, he will be absolutely dependent on circumstances and outcomes for his peace. A man is looking for an answer to his question, and it's a question that can only be answered by God. We are here at the Globe and Anchor Ranch. My good friend and mentor, Bart Hansen, has opened this up for us to dive into this adventure together. This ranch holds some very sacred kingdom memories. The first time we ever gathered a group of men, it was now over a decade ago, to wrestle with the content of becoming a king, took place right here. And this workshop that we're in was built by Bart in the hands and sweat and love of over 50 of us men over time. It was built to be an adventure center for the masculine soul. And so this is the perfect context to dive into what God has for us. Friends, think with me about a moment where you were entrusted with power. A moment that comes to mind for me took place in rural Western New York. It was the geography of childhood vacations and adventure for us as a family. We gathered back there together several years ago, and now all my siblings are married with children of our own, but we had a week of adventure. We rented this beautiful 21-foot, 300 horsepower Sea Ray watercraft, and for a week we just played on the water. The last evening, we gathered at a lakeside restaurant with wives and children and all of us just having joy. And we looked on the horizon and there was a major storm building on the other side of the lake. We realized we had to return the boat before sunset, but we didn't know if we could beat the storm. We prayed and asked God, and we sensed we were to go for it. So our wives and our children packed up in vehicles and headed home, and my two brothers and I headed out on open water, glassy calm, the calm before the storm, as we looked at the distance and saw thunderheads building in the sky. Right as we pulled into the dock, the heavens opened and rain pounded the lake. Thunder broke out, lightning was hurled at the earth, and it was awesome to be caught in a moment, to feel the power of the weather, of the watercraft, to be in a shared adventure with men I love. It was one of the most thrilling moments of my life. In Genesis, God pulls back the curtain. He lets us in on one of his most audacious plans. After his wildly creative work is done, he hands it all over, all of creation, to Adam and Eve like a wedding gift, and he invites them to rule. Right there in Genesis, God says, "Let us make men and women in our image, to be like us. They will reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, the livestock, and all the wild animals." In Waking the Dead, John Eldredge writes that we were intended to exercise a fierce mastery over our domain. Like a skipper runs a ship, like a foreman runs a ranch. Better said, like a king rules a kingdom. We were meant to govern, to rule as kings and queens. As the giant oak is hidden in the seed of the acorn, the intention of God for a king to rule a kingdom is seated in the heart of a man. Desire reveals design, and design reveals destiny. However, about any glance at the headlines will tell a far different story. We must pause and ask the question, what's gone wrong in the hearts of men? We tend to think problems are external, like a broken boss or a broken mower or a broken government. But often it's the external problems that are meant to be a window, a treasure trail to the internal condition in the soul of a man. Mike Mason said it so well when he said the heart of a man is like a densely populated city. Nothing can be built in its heart without something else being torn down. In order for us to recover our strength and recover our joy as men, we are in need of excavation. We are in need of reconstruction. Dallas Willard says it this way, that the primary work of God is finding men in whom he can entrust his power. And the story of most men is being entrusted with power and it bringing harm to themselves and those under their care. Perhaps a more vulnerable question than what's gone wrong with men being entrusted with power is this: what's gone adrift in my own masculine soul? I remember recently, more recently than I'd like to admit, I was going through some hard times and I wanted to share them with my wife. And I asked Sherry if she'd go to the bedroom so we could have a chat. When I showed up at the bedroom, she was rather stiff and I noticed it. And when I sat down, I said, Sherry, help me understand, how are you feeling right now? And she paused and responded with love and courage and vulnerability and said, Morgan, I'm bracing myself. I'm getting ready to hear what I did do that I shouldn't have done and what I didn't do that I should have done. Friends, just yet again, a moment like that, the grief as a man of missing the mark. What if today we found ourselves only part way in a story? What if the primary mission God was up to was to restore our heart and the whole person as a man? You see, we all have a kingdom and a realm or a domain which has been entrusted to our care. It's where we have say. It's where what we want done is done. You can think of simple choices, beginning with things like what I chose to wear today and what I had for breakfast. Think of it as beginning with our masculine soul, extending to include our bodies, our choices, our mind, our imagination. And then it grows from there in increasing measures. Our kingdom begins to include other people, responsibilities, and portions of God's kingdom that He has entrusted to us. And so a question for you and for me is, how is your kingdom? What are the state of things? What is the condition of your kingdom in this hour? Like a mature tree that's been uprooted and transplanted and doesn't yet have a sufficient root base to withstand the coming storms, most men find themselves with too much kingdom and not enough character, or that is to say wholeheartedness, integrity of soul, to be able to care for it well, to be able to lead it in love, bringing the heart and the intention of God. I remember a season where my kingdom was expanding rather quickly. I had come out of college and married this wonderful woman, Sherry. We rather quickly had a son, Joshua, and a daughter, Abigail. I was partnering with John Eldredge in a global-wide mission to rescue the hearts of men and women, and all of it was growing quick. I noticed the check engine lights on my soul begin to flash, and they were asking for my attention more and more. Something wasn't right. Something wasn't well. Externally, everything looked pretty good, but internally, fear was never far away. And I found myself turning to God, asking for counsel, asking for help. God, how do I interpret my life? What is a man's life meant to look like in this decade? What is a picture of masculine maturity and initiation? And for weeks it was silence. No response came. But in time, I sense what I would describe as a growing presence, a reassurance, an affection that Father wanted to speak, but he wanted to do it through men. He wanted to do it in the context of intimate relationship. And so I sat down and I wrote a single handwritten letter to the oldest man I knew who I respected, and I poured out the questions of a young man's soul. In time, that man responded with a letter, and I began creating a list. Over 2 years, it became almost 75 men, elders at the gates, fathers, sages, and guides, men in front of me on the journey to recover the gospel of life. The guys in faraway states or countries, it came in the form of letters back and forth. To the guys close, it came in the form of a cigar or a pint shared over a campfire. But what I gathered over time was a treasure chest of clues. And those clues were to a map that was leading back to an ancient path that was eager to be recovered. See, Chesterton said that every generation loses the gospel, this path back to life, and it's every generation that's charged with its recovery. I wondered if it was a recovery of the same path that Jeremiah spoke about thousands of years ago when he was speaking into a culture that was deeply misguided, where he says in chapter 6, "Stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient paths. Ask where the good way is and walk in it, and you will find rest for your souls." Becoming a king is a recovered map to an ancient path of becoming the kind of man, the kind of king in whom God can gladly entrust the care of his kingdom. I've spent the last 2 decades relentlessly choosing to become more and more of the kind of man who can be entrusted with the care of this message. I've put this message into the book, Becoming a King, into the study guide, and now into this video series, all as a gift and a tool for like-hearted men who want to go after all that God meant when he meant us as men. And so today it's an invitation. It's an invitation for those that want to be open to consider a radical reconstruction, a possibility that there might be more of what God meant when he meant us. It's an invitation to deep soul work with a curiosity about God, ourselves, and the story in which we live. Here's the inconvenient truth. Traveling this path isn't cheap, it isn't quick, and it isn't easy. But the promise is sure and lasting. Wherever you are today, whoever you've become today, if you choose to participate with God in recovering the ancient path and becoming the kind of king to whom God can gladly entrust the care of his kingdom, you can get your whole heart back as a man. You can be among the few in this generation that recover life as it was meant to be. And so today is an invitation to you. I make it available to you. For 2 decades, we've watched and participated in the restoration of the hearts of men. Friends, it works and it's available. There is more. And so I want to go back to the beginning. Think of a moment where you were entrusted with power. How did it go? What was that like for you as a man? It matters more than you might think.